Hey everybody, Zee Garcia here, and welcome to my top secret top 10 list. What is the secret top 10 list? Well, recently, Tom and Mike and myself, we made two sort of companion piece top 10 lists. One was top 10 casual games for 2 players, and the other one top 10 advanced games for 2 players. And both Tom and myself came to the conclusion that there's sort of an unspoken middle list. Those games that felt like a little too much, not relaxing enough to any rules for the casual list, but not that heady, not that thinky for the advanced list. Just sort of games in the middle somewhere. So we decided to go ahead and make those lists. So check out his list as well if you want to see the entire, center of the cluster there. So that's going to be it. I'm going to go ahead and knock out my list. We're going to do our top 10. And then you can, of course, tell me in the comments below what you think. If you agree with these, if you don't, what would be in sort of between those two extremes for you. Let's do it. Let's kick it off. Here we go. My number 10 is the newest game on the list, and this is a game called Botanic. It's a 2-player only game, a tile game, in which you are trying to build this steampunky contraption in front of you. You're going to be scoring points from same colors being next to each other and from these flowers that show up on some of them, if that's connected into its own color, things like that. A couple of parameters you're scoring. The way the game works, though, is you don't just grab a towel and take it and deploy it. You put them on the central contraption, which has spaces on your side, your opponent's side, as well as central locations, okay? So when you take a tile, and there's 3 face up on the table, you take one and you put it either on your side or the center line somewhere. To put it on your side of some spot, it has to share something with the central tile. That's either the shape, like the type of tile, or the color, okay? And you don't earn it. You just kind of program it. To earn it, you need to play a tile to the central spot that detaches yours, meaning it no longer shares anything with the center tile, and then it sort of falls off, and you can now take it and place it. Ideally, what you're doing is slowing your opponent down while speeding yourself up, right? So if my opponent's got a tile on the side of something and I have one, I want to put a tile in the center that detaches mine while still sharing something with theirs, meaning they don't get it. And it's clever. It's one of the lighter ones on this list. It's sort of a pretty straightforward game in many ways, but the mental sort of gymnastics of how to earn what you want, when you want it also, because you need to attach it right away, and sometimes you don't necessarily want to do that right away. I enjoy it. I think it's kind of a quirky game. It's got a weird theme. It's got a weird look, but it works quite well. And I don't think it's casual enough to make it on that list just because it's too strange and it has the potential, and this is something that would keep a game off my casual list, it has the potential to make you feel like you're messing up all the time. And I don't want games that do that. I want games that don't make you feel that way to be on that casual list. So there you go. That's my number 10, Botanic. My number 9 is an oldie but a goodie. It's a great 2-player game. The follow-up to a game called Roma from Stefan Feld. This is the sequel to that called Arena, Roma 2. Again from Stefan Feld. And it basically is Roma again with some updated powers, a new sort of way of handling things. The way it works is you have these spots that have die faces 1 through 6. And you're going to be adding cards on your side of those spots by paying gold coins. And then you roll dice every turn. At the beginning of your turn, you roll some dice and you can place them on these spaces to activate the card related to it. You can also take a die and place it on a spot that gives you coins. And you can also take a die and place it on a spot that gives you cards in your hand that you can then pay for and deploy. So the game's mechanisms aren't that complicated, but you have to figure out how to combo these things in order to score more victory points than your opponent. You have to know sometimes that when you roll the dice, for example, and you get a 2, 3, 3, you're holding a card, you can say, okay, well, this one costs 5 coins. I've already got a couple of coins, so I'm going to put the 3 on money. That gets me 3 coins. I'm now going to pay for this card, which doesn't take a die. You can just pay for a card and deploy it. I'm going to deploy it into the 2 spot. Then immediately use my 2 die I rolled and activate that. Boom! Then it happens. And so those combos are what really make the game interesting. And it's engaging, it's very confrontational, there's a lot of back and forth. You can destroy your opponent's cards across the line. You can move your stuff around. You can just churn victory points. So I like it quite a bit. It's on a seesaw because there's a limited pool of victory points. So you'll be stealing from there. And when they run out of that spot, you're hoping to have more than your opponent. But if you yourself ever run out of victory points because they're in the middle or your opponent has them, you're also done. It's tense, it's engaging, it's a very clever game, and I like it quite a bit. Way better than the original Roma, though that's still pretty good. But Arena, Roma 2, is a fantastic 2-player game. My number 8 is a reprint of a game called Hera and Zeus from Richard Borg, and the latest printing of this became Thunder and Lightning. It's a 2-player only game as well. And it is, in this one then, one player was Thor, the other player was Loki, and you are trying to find some hidden card that your opponent has somewhere in their deck of cards. The cards are going to be used from your hand sometimes. You play it and do whatever it says and discard it. But more often than not, they go in front of you on this grid pattern. 4 columns that could be up to 4 cards deep. And then you can attack your opponent with the front card of this line, which is all face down. This is all face down over here. You can say, I'm going to attack the card directly in front of me. We both flip them. Strongest card wins, and the weakest one gets discarded. So you have to, again, find this one special card. Your opponent could hold it in their hand and hope that you don't pluck it. There's some cards that could, like, just, whoop, take it. You could deploy to the field and defend it. You could try to misdirect me, with thinking of, with where it might be, that sort of thing. It might be in your deck of cards, and you haven't drawn it yet. The whole thing, the tension just has a real nice way of ratcheting up in this game. You have that card and you're just in fear the entire time. And your hand size starts to dwindle perhaps because you haven't been drawing enough cards, so you go, my hand's in danger. I'm going to deploy it. And then it's on the field, so now you're scared about it, being out there. So you need to bluff and make it seem like it's somewhere else. So you start defending one line really strongly. And your opponent's thinking, is it actually on the table, or are they bluffing me? Are they goading me into attacking this line, which might be a trap? The whole thing has a gorgeous new look, the Thunder and Lightning. And it just is a clever game. It feels a little bit like the classic Towers game. What is that called? Stratego. It's sort of Stratego, the card game in many ways, but with a great look, an interesting theme, and lots of special ability cards that all say what they do, but there's still quite a few of them. So there's a lot to internalize in the game, which is why it's definitely not a casual game. So that's my number 8, Thunder and Lightning. Number 7 for me is a game which is not exclusively for 2 players, but I think I prefer it at 2. It's a game called Deadline, and it's one of those whodunit kind of games in which the 2 players are cooperating, trying to solve a whodunit. You'll be playing cards to the table in order to get enough symbols visible on the table in order to look at some clue. So there's a few, there's some case, there's few clues on the table. They show you a difficulty and you say, together with the other player, okay, let's try to break into this office and snoop around. Great, this is what we're doing. And now we play some cards back and forth. Some are bad cards. They detract from your ability to do things well. Some are good. You're hiding some symbols and showing others. And when it's finally done, you've gained access to that thing. Now you will grab that card, which says break into the office, and you can both read it and see what you find out in there. You can take notes, you can discuss what you discovered, and then at the bottom of that one it says, okay, now you can follow these 2 new threads. Okay. And so you look, you think about what you've got in your hand, and you go, I don't think we have the ability to break into this place yet. How about we go question the waiter at the restaurant? Okay, let's go question the waiter. And I like it best at 2, I think, because it's enough discussion where you can toss ideas back and forth. You can sort of discover what happened, but it doesn't become unwieldy. With more than 2 players, it's sort of, the cases are pretty simple. It becomes sort of too much discussion for how light and straightforward the game is. But the game is still like a quirky couple of halves mashed together. The card game version, or the card game part of the game, and the deductive part of the game are just sort of squished together. It's not 2 kinds of games that normally go together. They really work. This is a great game. But it is not necessarily an obvious mixture. I really like it quite a bit. It's closer to casual than not, but it is a story-heavy kind of game. So there's a little bit more to it than just sort of relaxing playing cards. And there's that tension of you might fail because you're working together. So yeah, I like it. It's one that I don't think it's a lot of love, Deadline, but I certainly would recommend you give it a go. And like I said, with 2 players, it is excellent. It comes with 12 cases. They're not replayable. Once you know it, you know it. But it comes with 12 right in the box, and that's plenty. You're going to get a lot of play time out of this one. Deadline. Next up for me at number 6 is a game called Raptor for 2 players only, and this one certainly looks a little easier than it ends up being. It's an asymmetric game for 2 players. One side is playing raptors. You have a mama raptor and a bunch of little baby raptors. And then the other side is scientists. And they are trying to study these raptors. And while the mama raptor is trying to protect the babies. So you're going to be playing cards simultaneously. You'll reveal those cards. The lower of the 2 cards gets its ability, something printed on the card. You might gather the babies, or you might put up fencing, or fire to control the animals. And then the other player, whoever played the higher card, does not get the ability. Instead, they get a number of action points equal to the difference between the 2 numbers. And so it becomes very puzzly. It's a very much in some ways, it's quite an abstract strategy game with a really cool theme on top of it. But there's a lot of decision paths that you could take. How you handle what you are trying to do could go many different ways. And so it's very engaging. It's a little bit of a tricky game to learn. It's actually one of the trickier games to learn, I would say, on the list here, even though it's not the heaviest. But you have to learn a lot of little unintuitive rules that thematically make sense. You can move from here to here. The raptor can run in a straight line as far as you want to for a single sort of action point. Things like that you just have to know and learn, or look at the helper, the player aid. But it's fun and it's very tense. The games always are close. You're always sort of in that moment of, do I want a lot of actions? Do I want to play high? Is my opponent going to be playing a low card right now? Do I want to play something that, you don't want to be the one who plays the number 2 card when your opponent plays their 9. Because then, yeah, sure, you get your 2 power, but then they get 7 action points. That's a tremendous momentum moment for them. So I like it quite a bit. Raptor is an excellent 2-player game. Gorgeous artwork, great little figures, and a lot to think about. So that's my number 6. Number 5 for me is from the Lookout Spiele line of 2-player games. There's a bunch of great ones on there. And this one is called Glasgow. You are building a little city in the center of the table with the other players, sort of both building this little city. And you are trying to score victory points from doing that. The sort of bump in complexity comes from the circle of characters that you build around where the city's going to get built up. And then you can move along that circle taking a specific action associated with that character. There's a decent amount of them. So you need to again, strategize and figure out which one thing you should be doing. Every now and then along that circle, there's a character, a location where you can build a tile. And you'll take that tile, spend your resources, iron and stone and what have you, and build that tile out in the center of the city. The tiles are going to score based on proximity to other things, based on if they're on the outside edge of this little, I think it's a 5x5 or 6x6. And that's it. It's actually one of the shorter games on my list, I would say. But it is thinky, and it is highly tactical. It's got a lot going on. There is that possibility for you to just sort of mess something up and not see that you're, by only traveling to this character, you're leaving your opponent to do something great on their next turn. So you need to be looking ahead, seeing what they're building, what kind of combos they want, and deny them that thing ideally. So I really like it. Not a looker. I don't think it's a particularly attractive game, but it is a very engaging two-player game that gives me that feeling of city building in a smaller package without losing any of the combo-rific stuff I like in that kind of game. So, number 5 for me, Glasgow. All right, next up, number 4 is a game that almost made it onto my advanced two-players list, but didn't quite, and that is Unmatched. Unmatched has a decent amount going on, but the decks of cards in which represent your fighter in this arena are a large chunk of your deck versus your opponent's deck are the same. And there are few cards that differentiate you, that make you special, that make you unique, with a few special abilities, that sort of thing. The tactical movement on the board is also pretty straightforward. There's no puzzling it out. You can clearly see where you can go. You clearly know whether you want to be close to your opponent or far away from them. So that part plays out pretty easily. It's all about then, whenever you do get into a fight, which card do you play? Do you go for a strong attack? But if they have a bunch of cards in their hand at this moment, they probably have a good defense. They likely do. So maybe you bluff with something low, have them waste a great defense, and then later hit them with a big one. Those are the sort of considerations you're bringing to the table. The thing that makes it really fun and definitely kicks up the complexity is the variety of characters available out there. There's a lot of content for this game already, and more on the way. So this is one that I certainly would not introduce to someone out of the gate without them having played some more casual, card games and board games. But it is not so advanced that I would hesitate to teach it to someone comfortable with special abilities, and at least a little bit. Because that's really all you need to know. You have your character, look through that, figure out kind of what you do. Some are certainly easier than others, so there's that consideration too. And then have at it. Games are quick. It's about a 25-minute game probably. And that's it. Sort of a quick burst of tactical positioning and fighting, and then you're done. So I think it's a fantastic game. I really like it, and I certainly recommend it, especially if you just love playing a character that is your character, and you get to take it up against some other ridiculous historical figure or fantastical figure. Then there's few games that come up to the pure sort of silly joy of having Dracula fighting Little Red Riding Hood. This one is going to give you that, and I really like it. So Unmatched, the whole series, is my pick. So as I said for number 4, Unmatched almost made it onto my advanced list. Well, this pick almost made it onto my casual list. This game is Nagaraja. But there's too many things going on for it to really be that casual. You are building or sort of rediscovering, I suppose, this temple board in front of you with 3x3 grid in the center that begins empty. And every round there's a tile in the center which represents some sort of path in different configurations, which the players are going to be bidding for. You're going to be sort of fighting over that. You have cards in this game, and at that moment you'll play some of those cards and they'll let you roll dice. These really cool dice sticks that have only 4 faces. And so you'll play your cards, you'll get whatever dice they say they give you, you then lose those cards, and you roll these dice sticks. Then, whoever rolled the most coins on those dice sticks is going to win that tile. But before you do that, you can play cards for their abilities, to mess with your opponent, to help bolster what you're doing, to change around these treasures that you perhaps are trying to arrive at around your board. So there's a decent amount going on. There's sort of too many steps for it to be a casual game. But it feels in many ways kind of breezy. It's a quick playing game. It doesn't bog down with too much minutia. You sort of understand the way everything works. Roll your dice. You get hosed sometimes. Sometimes you don't. The dice on the faces that don't give you that strength, those gold coins, they have a symbol that lets you play a card. So if you rolled a bunch of coins, you won't be playing too many cards. If you didn't, vice versa. So it sort of evens out that way. I really enjoy it. I think it's a gorgeous game, for one thing. And it feels thinky while sort of putting me in an Indiana Jones sort of adventure-esque vibe. So it doesn't feel too serious, you know? And I really enjoy it. I just think it's a wonderful two-player game. I keep seeing it on sale for some reason. And I don't know why this game is not getting love. You've got to check Nagaraja out. It's a wonderful two-player game. My number 3 pick. All right, on to the top 2 here. And both of these are games I absolutely adore. My number 2 pick is a game called Caper. This is getting a reprint soon. That was on Kickstarter, and it should be coming out at some point. And so the version I'm talking about here is technically the one right before it, the first one that they came out with for Caper. It is a drafting game for only 2 players, and I know that sounds like, okay, really? Drafting just for 2? But it works really well, in which you are sending out your thieves onto a city. There's a couple of different cities in the game, in the box. You pick some, like Rome. There's a couple of locations. There's 3 locations in the center of the table. And so you'll draft thieves. You'll take one, deploy it somewhere, and then give your hand to your opponent. They give you theirs, and you take a look. You deploy another thief somewhere. Once that's done, the turns will go back and forth between you drafting these characters and deploying them, and then drafting from a different deck of cards, which is gear for these characters. Well, I'm going to give this character a laser, and I'm going to give this character some sort of scuba suit to sneak in there through the sewers or something. And all these things will give you influence, they'll give you victory points, they'll give you all sorts of things. You're trying to control the locations, or just build other combos, you know? Oh, this thief gives you victory points based on every blue card you've assigned them. Great, every time I see a blue card, boom, it's getting played on that character. The game is very whimsical looking. I love the artwork. I think it's very cartoony and very attractive. It feels like an old cartoon. But the thinkiness behind it, the tactical nature of when you draft what, how you play out your cards, where you're trying to fight your opponents and where you're willing to sort of let them inch ahead in order to do something over here at this different location. The whole thing is very captivating. This is one of those games that I have rarely ever sat down and played a single time. I mean, almost always. Once the game is over, we're shuffling up and we're playing again. We might switch out the city. Oh, now we're in Paris instead of Rome, but we are playing again because it has that sort of addictive quality to it. Wonderful, wonderful game. Caper, my number 2. And finally, my number 1, and you might suspect this is my number 1 if you know the kinds of games I like, Blue Moon, or Blue Moon Legends, same game. Blue Moon is a game that I considered putting on my previous advanced list. But if you are just pulling out a deck of cards in Blue Moon and playing with that one, it's not that complicated. It's a fairly straightforward tug-of-war style game in which I submit a fight to you with a character and maybe a boost card, and then I announce how strong that is. It says it right there on the card. This character is 3. It has a 2 boost, so my combined strength is 5 in either earth or fire. I pick one of those things if I'm starting a fight. So 5 fire. And then you need to respond with at least 5 fire or more, or bow out of the fight and I win. And so it kind of lobs back and forth like this, with special abilities messing things up and tricking your opponent and that kind of thing. So that's fairly straightforward. But then on top of that, there's possible deck building. Especially if you get Blue Moon Legends, which was an all-in-one package that had everything that had come out for the game. You could then really get into the nitty-gritty and build your own deck of characters and your own card pool, make your own 30-card deck, and customize the experience for yourself. And that is a little more advanced. So again, it kind of lives in between these two things for me. It's a wonderful game. I think a lot of folks out there don't like it because they think the game is too much of it feels like war is the usual complaint. And by that I mean, take a card from a deck of cards and flip it and see which one's higher. But that's really robbing the game of a lot of strategy. You are not just flipping something over, you are choosing to respond or not respond. Sometimes, if you feel like you're in a bad spot, you want to make a really big push early and be like, oh, you played 3 earth? Boom, 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 boom. Here's 9 earth. Because I want you to back off. Because I don't think I'll be able to stay in the fight. If you actually are able to respond to this 9 earth, I'm in trouble. So I like that one-upmanship that the game provides. I really enjoy it. So there you go. That's my number 1 sort of in-betweener game for 2 players. Blue Moon. And that's it for my list, everybody. So again, tell me in the comments below what you think. Are these games something you would consider somewhere in between casual and more advanced? Would you scoot them this way or that way? And as I said, go check out Tom's companion list to this one and see the kinds of things he picked and tell him where he is clearly wrong. So, all right, that's going to do it, everybody. My name is Zee Garcia. I appreciate you. I'll see you on the next one.